Is it just me, or has human-only fantasy had become more popular recently than fantasy with non-humans? Well, fae are plenty popular, and it seems Golbans are now for some reason. I think people got tired of seeing elves and dwarves all the time. There are about 5 decades of fantasy writing between Tolkien and GRRM. Trends come and go, but there is plenty of human-only fantasy throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Still a lot of fae and dragons about. A lot of fae could be elves, except elves suffer from the noble assumption. Fae are seen as more immoral, and gray main characters are in at the moment. Depends on where you look, I think. Anime fantasy seems to be having a huge elf kick right now, especially with the success of Frieren and Dungeon Meshi. Game of Thrones has a number of non-human humanoids in the setting, like giants, others, and the children of the forest. They're just not very central to the plot. There are also plenty of romantasy works that feature fae, werewolves, orcs, and so on. It's just the classic Tolkien races that are relatively unfashionable at the moment, although long-lived, wise, and beautiful is still pretty common. How far did you read in Throne of Glass? Because I can confirm there are plenty of non-humans, they are just humanoids. I also think you're looking at some confirmation bias. My shelf has current publications with vampires, fae, dragons like the thinking, talking, planning kind. Non-humans have all left for romantasy, where there's less prejudice, fewer chances of getting murdered just because you were born with green skin and tusks, and getting laid is almost guaranteed. Malazan, Tlan Amas, Jaghut, Topkakai, Barghast, Trell, Forkrulasail, Cain Chamal, Teast Andii, Oliasin Eater, the Eliant, Azath/Azathoni, Kenrala/Kenelra. If by recently you mean 2 to 3 decades. If you don't have cactus people and mosquito people, it isn't fantasy. There are 8 billion people in the world. Stop asking, is it just me? Questions. Game of Thrones focuses on humans, but that world has several other races. There is definitely an element of counterculture in terms of this kind of thing, but you can still find best-selling fantasy with fantastical races. I think it's just you. Personally, I am bored to death of the D&D races. If the author isn't going to world build a new race, then I'd rather just have humans. Depends where you look, I guess. If anything, humans are the default in most fantasy at any given time. Most of the other fantasy folk look roughly human at a glance too. I'd like to see more humanoids that aren't just near humans or rubber forehead aliens. Depends on the inspiration from what I see. I'm talking old stuff, as I've noticed we're just coming out a bit more from the shadow of Tolkien. Among the genre's heavy hitters, Conan, Earthsea, Game of Thrones, and pre-Tolkien fantasy are all human-centric. To some degree, I think the genre is going through the growing pains of moving past the man who defined it for so long. Many authors are also taking more influence from those works as Tolkien grows more distant. True. As someone said, it almost there is nothing left but fae and goblins. I'm actually tired of searching for a book with non-human new race that could be, or could not be intelligent. I just want hunting monsters to be a trend again. Throne of Glass has elves/fae. The main character is one. The witches are also a non-human race. Game of Thrones has non-humans. The Targaryens are pretty clearly part dragon. The children of the forest are non-human. The giants are giants. The Starks are wargs, among other things. The others are not human. A Kotar has fae and other creatures. Folk of the air, fairies/fae/elves, among other creatures. Quicksilver, fae and vampires, possibly as a dark elf alternative. Sanderson's works has plenty of non-humans and unique creatures. Try the Mistborn series if you haven't yet. If by recently you mean in the past 30 years, yes. Elves, orcs, dwarves type of fantasy was starting to be cliché at the 1980s. The big fantasy series of the 90s are Wheel of Time and A Song of Ice and Fire. All humans. Well, there are faes in the later books of the Throne of Glass series and in a lot of the female lead fantasy, romance, books. I think the main reason lies in their physical attractiveness compared to dwarves and some other species. Well, it's the sort I like best. So many good books: Abercrombie, Kay, Martin, Abraham. Abercrombie's latest book had elves. Or, actually, one elf. Fae are just humans with magic. Romantasy is filled with fae. Tad Williams is still publishing and he has elves, or things that are elves in all but name. New Malazan is coming out in the fall, and that has a bunch of different races. While that's only a couple bigger series, I'm sure there are more if you look.